conversation because he's an immensely talented kid on the field. And Booger, we've had, I don't know, a dozen different draft people tell us he's the number one defensive player. He's the most talented guy. And on the other end of it, we've got our buddy KJ Wright that says, no, nay, never. Never draft that guy at number 5. You come in overweight to a workout. You don't handle your off the field business. Can't do it. Can't win with them with that 5th pick in the draft. Where does Booger McFarland fit in that spectrum?
Well, here's what I say. The draft is about talent and about potential. Are any of these kids finished products? No. Are all of them a little bit immature? Yes, in their own way. That's kind of what the NFL is about, isn't it? I think Mike Tomlin always said, I'm not afraid of the guy that needs coaching. Like, that's my job, right? My job is to coach him up and teach him how to be a pro. So I wouldn't worry about some of those things. I think as long as the off-the-field stuff checks out as far as the law and all that stuff, I think you got to figure out how he's going to get to work because the license has been suspended. I think you got to answer that question. But, Brock, you know as well as I know, like, there's one thing you can't replace, and that's talent. And I think if your organization is strong enough, because from everything that I've been told, the talent is there. He's just not a chief. He's an Indian. So he needs somebody to follow. So if you got some chiefs in your organization, both at the head coaching position, at the position coach spot, and on your team in the locker room, then I think he's a home run. I think he is what Pete has wanted for a long time, which is that guy at the 3 technique spot that can create havoc, that can command a double team, that can set the tone for everyone else, much like Aaron Donald does for the Rams, much like Warren Sapp did for us, much like Fletcher Cox did for Philly for so long. Like, you have to have a guy that kind of serves the meal and sets the table for everyone else. And I think he's the guy that can do that.
Is Warren Sapp the comp? And we've heard people reference his name quite a bit, and obviously you knew him and know him very well. And there were quote-unquote questionable character concerns when he was coming out of college as well. Is he a good comp for Jalen Carter? No,
they're different type players. Jalen Carter, Brock, follow me. I know you'll love this one. He's a twitched-up Ndamukong Suh. More of a power player, but he's got a lot of twitchiness to him to make some of the moves that Sue couldn't make. He's big. You know, he's 6'3", 330 or whatever. He probably should be around 300 pounds. But you know as well as I know, that's about getting the guy in the building and you know, teaching him how to be a pro and not being on the banquet circuit. But he can command a double team. He's got enough looseness in his hips to be able to make the inside moves to get to the quarterback. A la Aaron Donald, a la Warren Sapp, a la Grady Jarrett, but he's powerful like Sue, like Fletcher Cox. So I think he's the real deal, man. If you can just, again, I will reiterate, if you go back to 2021 when Jordan Davis was there, they didn't have any issues. Jordan Davis was the chief. Everybody kind of fell in line. Jordan Davis leaves, and now Jalen Carter's kind of been thrust into that role, and he didn't quite handle it well. So as long as you got the proper structure, I think the kid will be a home run, man. I really do.
The name that we have gravitated to over the last few weeks, Booger, with different guys that have come on, is Jeffrey Simmons. And I went back and looked at the combine. Now, Jeffrey had torn his knee, so he didn't perform at the combine. And obviously, Jalen was dealing with some legal stuff then, so he didn't work out at the combine and put up those numbers. But height, weight, arm length, those kind of things. And a number of guys have come on the show and said, you know what? I think even David Pollock said that. Yeah, I think there's a lot of Jeffrey Simmons. Is that a fair common day comp?
That's a fair one. I do think he's got a little bit more fluidity to the hips than Simmons does. But, I mean, Simmons, what do you have, 8-9 sacks last year? Got paid a monster contract. He's been really good. And, again, Simmons is another story. Think about this, Brock. I mean, he got a lot of trouble at Mississippi State, a lot of issues with Jeffrey Simmons, but he got in the NFL, turned his life around, hadn't really heard a peep from him other than on the field and great stuff. He's been a model citizen in Tennessee. So there's just a more modern day example of a guy that has quote unquote questions in his background, some issues, extra research you have to do, however you classify it, that when he got to the NFL, not only has he excelled, but he's been dominant and already made it to a second contract. I think if I told the people in Seattle that they were going to get Jeffrey Simmons 2.0, I'm pretty sure they'd be excited, right, Brock?
Very, yeah. I think we'd be ecstatic about the idea. Booger McFarland with us here on Brock and Salk, Seattle Sports on 710. It's interesting. I like that you bring up the idea of these guys not being finished products, that they're still young, that they have talent, that they have, potential. And I think Pete Carroll, more than anybody, really feels like he can help young people grow into being men. How important is that for a head coach and for an organization to have that belief?
Well, you got to be able to do it, right? Coaches are teachers, coaches are mentors. And if you just understand what these kids have been given, they're 20 to 22 years old. You just gave them millions of dollars. You gave them a lot of time. You bring them to a new city where everybody's going to be trying to get a piece of them. Like, you got to have somebody to show them the ropes. And I think that, not enough is made of that. Like, these kids are very moldable. Now, it's very rare does a guy come in, button up, ready to go, and, Peyton Manning, and he's got a Rolodex of what to do, what not to do. Like, that just doesn't happen. A lot of these kids that are going to get drafted are going to come in, and they're going to be sponges. They're going to be looking for somebody to gravitate to so they can really learn how to be a pro. Brock, I'm sure when you got to the NFL, somebody showed you how to be a pro. How do you study defenses as a quarterback, as a pro? Like, it's a lot different than college. Like, how do you live in a certain part of the country? Like, if you've grown up in Florida all your life, how do you come live in Seattle? I mean, where it gets dark at 3 o'clock and it rains all summer. I mean, come on now. Like, I mean, that's something that, for me, for a country boy from Louisiana, if I were to have gotten drafted by Seattle, it would be a culture shock. It would be something that probably would take more getting used to than the actual on-the-field stuff. So there's a lot that goes into when you draft a guy and you bring him to a different part of the world and you tell him, hey, show up and be a pro. Doesn't always work that way.